Windhager, Wood, inside 50. Wanganeen Miller! What a mark!
G'day and welcome to the GameDay Squad Aussie Rules Fantasy Show. I'm Pitty, and joining me to cover everything Aussie Rules this season is Haz, and together we are the Fantasy Bros. We've partnered with GameDay Squad to bring you everything that you need to know to succeed in this season's Aussie Rules competition. Haz, how are you, mate?
Mate, another showdown. It comes to the end of our preview series. There's 6 so far, and really been some fantasy or GDS relevant players, I should say, for this season. And obviously, there's still a few shows to go and out very shortly. So viewers, keep an eye out on our socials and keep grab one when they do drop, because you won't want to miss what is coming out in those textbooks. We've covered pretty much everything you will need. Aussie Rules competition in depth in that textbook. So make sure you keep an eye on our socials across all the Fantasy Bros.
Yeah, that's it. And hopefully when everyone does pick up that textbook as well, hopefully you can realise the amount of hard work that has gone into it and the passion as well, because we love our footy, and we're getting closer and closer to that opening round, which we are so excited for, as I'm sure all our viewers and listeners are as well. So, mate, with that being said, let's continue on with our team previews. So what can our viewers expect from us across this preview series?
Before we do get on to that, I do apologise, mate. I forgot to ask how you going. How are you going?
Oh, I'm good, thanks, mate. I'm all good. But as I said, mate, I'm just pumped for that season to begin. Hey, like counting down the days, and just can't wait till we don't have to worry about Premier League football and global cricket and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, bring on the footy, mate. I am well.
Yes, lots on, that's for sure. But like you said, it is our sixth and final installment of our pre-season team preview series, where we're going to preview all 18 AFL clubs by letting you know their ins and outs, any positional changes from last season, their primetime fixtures, under 22 guns, and finally the must-have players to target this season. There's also an exciting pack opening competition where you, the viewers, as always, can win some pretty special prizes. Don't forget to like and subscribe across all of our socials to keep up to date via @FantasyBros AU on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Apple Music, and Spotify.
If you're new to GameDay Squad, then you can sign up using the promo code FBAR26, that's all in capital letters, to get yourself 3 9-player common packs, plus you'll receive a stack of bronze cards to help get your free-to-play AFL starter squad up and running. And again, those 3 9-player common packs, they're so handy in putting your first contender team together, aren't they? So, in saying that, mate, let's jump straight into our last team preview for the 2026 preseason. I feel like one of those players at the moment that just wants to get to opening round. I've done all the hard work. I'm ready to go. So in this last episode, we'll be previewing the Sydney Swans, the Western Bulldogs, and the West Coast Eagles. Do you want to start by running us through how the Swans went last season, what their primetime and Sunday fixtures look like for the new GDS competitions, and of course, what player movement has occurred over the off-season?
Yeah, of course, mate, can do. So the Sydney Swans finished the 2025 home and away season in 10th place with a 12-11 win-loss record, narrowly missing out on finals. The Swans endured a pretty slow start to the season, suffering what felt like another grand final hangover in a repeat of their 2023 campaign, where the early inconsistency set them back early after a heavy defeat in the grand final, like what happened in 2024. They struggled to gain momentum throughout the opening half of the year, sitting outside the top 8 and finding it really difficult to convert some strong performances into wins. A clear turning point came with the return of Errol Goulden, who I'm sure we'll talk about throughout the episode, and that his presence just added class and balance to the midfield and helps stabilise their ball movement across the field. From that point, Sydney turned things around, produced a much stronger second half of the season where they went 8-3 to finish the year with an improved form and confidence, which allowed them to challenge quality opposition late in the year. Despite that late surge, the damage done early proved too costly, leaving them just short of September football. And I think missing finals would have been a huge disappointment, because no doubt the Swans believed they had the talent to contend against the top 8 teams and challenge for that premiership. Obviously, they've made 2 grand finals in 5-year span, so they definitely are contenders, and they'll no doubt bounce back this season when we should see them entrenched in the top 8 for the majority of the season this year. But outside that, their special comps, they have 5 primetime fixtures in 2026 up until round 15. which makes them very relevant in our new competition. They have only the 2 FantasyBros Sunday Showdown fixtures this season up until round 15, which is the equal second fewest appearances in the competition. Some key under 22 eligible players. Now, I'll have to say I don't really think we're probably going to be playing these guys all that often, if probably at all. And it's Caden Cleary, who is a forward, and Tom Henley, who is also a forward. They obviously showed a little bit last year, but I don't think they're going to be competing with the scorers that we're going to be looking to play every week, in averaging around probably 65 to 70 points in our forward lines in that under 22 competition. And then obviously we have our key player movement from the off-season. So their key outs, Ollie Florent and Will Hayward, headed across to Carlton through trade, and then Aaron Francis was delisted. And then their key ins, we have Charlie Curnow coming across from Carlton in that mega trade, Malcolm Roses Jr. from the Gold Coast Suns, and Jai Sarong from Hawthorn, reassuring a bit of defensive and also their forward stocks as well throughout the off-season. And then one notable position change is their skipper, Callum Mills, has changed from a midfielder to a defender in GDS for season 2026. Is there anything that stands out to you, mate?
Oh, just that big key full forward that has come across from Carlton. I'm sure he'll be very handy there at the Sydney Swans, that no doubt we'll be talking about a bit later. But obviously, just in terms of their season, they're one of the quality teams, aren't they, in the competition, but just really struggled in that first half of the season. Remember that Horse retired as well at the end of that grand final loss in 2024. So that, I wonder if that had a bit to play as well, that, Dean Cox coming in for his first season. But yeah, as you said, so that partway through the year where they really started to get on a roll, they put some good wins together in that back end of the season. So no doubt they'll want to build on that coming into season 2026. But nothing else further to add. Are you happy for me to continue on to our deep data dive?
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's get stuck into it then, because it does lead us in nicely. There's a lot of Sydney Swans in terms of that fantasy relevant data and the fantasy relevant players in 2026 based on that data. So thanks to DFS Australia and now GameDay Society, we've gathered some data on each team's market share of GDS points, their centre bounce attendances, and some kick-in statistics as well. Now, you heard that right. Mark from GameDay Society, or Mighty Hoss as he's more affectionately known as within the GDS community, he reached out to us the other day and provided us with some amazing data around the market share of GDS points for each team. So he crunched the numbers and he found how each player contributes to their team's scoring across the whole season as a percentage. But not only that, he also found that he found these numbers for just the games that each player played throughout the season. So in other words, we get to look at the realistic contribution of each player to their team's GDS scoring with games played taken into account. And as we've said about, in the last few episodes, mate, or this whole team preview series, looking at this market share and of course the CBAs and the kick-in data, considering the ins and outs for this year, we can start to look at who might get a bit of a bump up in their scoring, or maybe who might get a look into that midfield rotation, who might see a bit of a bump in their scoring due to some extra kick-ins. So this is all really valuable data that we use to inform our discussions and the players we want to be pulling in our packs. Now, also, before I get into that, just make sure, if you haven't been keeping up with any of GameDay Society's preseason articles, just make sure you go and head to their website, check it out, jump in the GDS Discord server as well. They're doing some amazing work, as always. Big shout out to Hoss, Zonald, and Mel's. I know I love their work. I'm sure you do too, mate. And not just in the Aussie rules space, but everything they do for women's Aussie rules and football as well. It's unreal. So make sure you're getting around them. And if we have a look at that data there, I think some of the key things we can see, obviously, if you're looking at the market share in particular, you see their big Ruckman Grundy there at the top, contributing the most last season. And that data I've put on the screen, that's their contribution for the games that they've played as well. So again, the games played is taken into account. That's why you're going to see Errol Goulden up the top. If we actually looked at that contribution of points across the season, Goulden's down further on that because he only played, I think, the 10 games from memory at the back end of the season. So this is for the games the players have actually played. So it's a bit more realistic of a snapshot. So Grundy's at 1, followed by Errol Goulden just behind him. Isaac Heaney as well, being that second sort of midfielder behind Goulden. Or I think he's actually their main midfielder, just in that CBA. So he's there at 6.6%. We've got Blakey as well as a defender. He scores quite well. And again, a lot of familiar names down to the 10 because they've got such a good side. You look at their CPAs, again, very similar names to that market share. You've got Brodie Grundy. He attends the most at 80% for his team, which again makes sense as the ruckman. But Isaac Heaney there, their number one midfielder, he's attending 3/4 of his team's CBAs now, which is great given that he's not spending as much time forward. He's definitely more around the ball these days, which is awesome. Chad Warner comes in at third with 59%, and then James Rowbottom. So that's kind of their typical midfield rotation there, the Swans that you'll see. It's Grundy, Heaney, Warner, Rowbottom. And then again, some other names will rotate through there, like your James Jordan, Angus Sheldrick, McInerney at times, and Goulden for a little bit as well. If you look at their kick-ins, it's dominated by Nick Blakey. He takes 115 kick-ins, or he took 115 kick-ins last season, playing on, again, 97% of the time, which is unreal. Matt Roberts, Callum Mills, Riley Bice, they'll chip in there or thereabouts, but definitely nowhere near as much as Blakey. He really has that monopoly on those Sydney kickouts. Just looking at that data, mate, is anything standing out to you?
Well, first of all, I want to give a massive shout out to Hoss. I know you've already talked about it. That's a huge effort, mate. So thanks a lot for providing that data through to us. And obviously, we've been talking about the fantasy market share, and obviously we are on the GameDay squad platform. So it's great that you've crunched the numbers and provided that to us to share with all listeners and viewers. So massive thank you to Hoss. And yeah, awesome work that he's doing over there at GameDay Society. So make sure you, like Pitty said, follow along and check out what they're also putting out there across the Discord server. But I just do have our fantasy market share, have a little bit of a comparison. So Grundy did come out on top in that as well, and Errol Goulden did come into second. Even though you said that it takes into games played, he still did come into second in that fantasy market share, followed by Isaac Heaney. So the top three do remain the same, which is good. But yeah, Errol Goulden, as I mentioned, as soon as he comes back into the side, they look like a different team. He just adds class across like all aspects of the game. Silky mover, clean ball use, lethal left foot. So they love having the ball in his hands. And it is a little bit surprising to see that his CBAs is only at 19%, but that probably just shows that he is an outside player and he looks to roll into the stoppage either from a wing or maybe a half-forward flank, and just kind of play that outside role. And, Heaney's or Rowbottom is the one that looks to get it out to him so he can utilize those skills more effectively. But I do want to point out the fact that Isaac Heaney, it's good to see that he has finally made the move to pretty much a permanent midfielder now after all these years of Isaac Heaney. Like, he's a superstar in the forward line. He has X factor, and we never just really seem to, get Isaac Heaney having the opportunity to have 25 touches and kick 3 goals from the midfield in impact games like he has been for the past couple of seasons, mind you. So it's really good to see him now moving in there and being that main banana, as we talk about, in that midfield for the Sydney Swans. And geez, he's looked absolutely unreal in that midfield mix since taking that role. And then obviously Chad Warner himself, he's an absolute gun and probably going to be a must play in our new competitions for our prime time fixtures and any FantasyBros Sunday Showdowns that the Sydney Swans have, because he can just put up a ceiling score on any day, just like Goulden. He's a silky mover and he can pull a big performance out of the bag and kick a couple goals as well from the midfield. So obviously they're the big three of the Swans, and I'm probably going to be talking a little bit about those three all season long. But outside of those, obviously Grundy had another great season last year and finishes an all-star in the ruck line alongside Max Gawn. Going to be interesting to see how the new ruck rules affect him this season, whether or not he might have a backup ruck, and whether obviously Peter Laddams takes that second ruck role again this year. But outside of that, I don't think really anything stands out to me.
I think probably the main thing is just the consistency in their, the team they're putting out this season compared to last. Like, we look at the outs, they have Ollie Florin and Will Hayward were probably the two notable ones, obviously Jack Buller as well. But I think in terms of particularly the midfield rotation and their key stocks, I think they'll be much the same again this year. They'll just be looking to build off last season. So I don't expect much to change in terms of their midfield rotation. It'll be very similar. probably the couple that I would like to maybe just touch on as well there, just a couple of defenders like Nick Blakey again. He's a really solid defender there. You can see he's really high up in that GDS market share. And even if you look at his average from last season, like his average was 104 GDS points. So I think he's a good pick, like just on any given week, really, as a bit of a pod. And obviously definitely one of those defenders you want to play for your special competitions. But I'm also really liking Callum Mills too. I think he's had a really good preseason this year. And he's one that could be just sneakily ticking along to have a cracking year. I know that he's a bit unlucky with some injuries across his time, and particularly in the last couple of years. I know he hurt his shoulder in the preseason a couple of years ago, I think it was. So I'm sure he's looking to bounce back and have a much better year, or at least build off the good work he had last season too. Even sort of going back to 2024, how many games did he even play? I can't remember off the top of my head. Played 6 games, average of 81, so was a bit down in 2024. But then if you look at 2025, built off that a little bit, which is really good. And how many games did he get in there? So we got 12 games, so a little bit more. But again, he averaged that 104 GDS points, which was an improvement on what he did the previous season. And I think if he's building that really good work in this preseason currently, hopefully he can get a bit of mid-time potentially, or at least have that really nice halfback role we like. And hopefully we could see some of those kick-ins go up for him if he's playing a greater part of the season. So I really like him as a pick this year too.
Yeah, just looking at Callum Mills from 2022, he did have a season to remember. He played 25 games. Obviously, they made finals. He averaged 126.84. So he does have a really big season ceiling, and obviously that shows consistency as well. I think that was probably in the midfield, and I probably don't expect him to probably be there as much, but we know he can score well. So it is a great shout to see him fit and firing. And if he can look to get back to any of that form from 2022, 2023, and like you mentioned last season, he'll be a great plug in our defender line this season. And I think I saw something the other day that it's the first time he's played or on track to play opening round for the last 6 years or something. So he's going to be looking forward to leading his team out. Obviously, he'll be disappointed, obviously, after last season, the way the season started after the silly Sunday shenanigans at the end of 2024 made him miss the start of the year. So I think he's got a bit of a point to prove, and maybe he might be a great play in one of the opening round or even round one, just for that fact alone that he's playing and he's got a point to prove early in the season.
Yeah, that's it. I reckon that 2022 season, he would have definitely been going through the midfield for that average, but just shows the quality of player that he is. And yeah, I agree. I think he'll be down back for them and distributing, and they want the ball in his hands. And we know that we as GDS coaches get rewarded when our players are looking to use the ball by foot. So yeah, keep an eye on him and look to play him in our standard competitions as well as special competitions. So we might jump into our players that we picked out for the 2026 season, mate. Would you like me to kick off first, or would you like to go first? I'll give you the choice.
I reckon you can go first. We've kind of already touched on your player a little bit there.
Just continue the conversation a bit. Hey, so we'll continue talking about Errol Gould, and he's my pick for this season. I was looking through their team, and I really wanted to talk about Gould, just because he's an absolute star of the competition, and he has been ever since he debuted way back in 2021. And I still remember that debut game as well, because that was against our Lions up here at the Gabba, and I think he kicked 3 and just looked like a star from the get-go. And ever since then, he's really cemented himself as one of the premier fantasy players in the competition. But unfortunately, he only managed to play the 10 games in 2025, which were all in the back half of the year, because he sustained that ankle injury late in the preseason that required surgery and an extended recovery period. But in just his 10 games last year, he still managed to average 122.9 GDS points and in that time for the Swans. So that made him their number 1 mid when you sort by average. And this also has him as the number 5 midfielder in the comp, believe it or not, coming into the 2026 season, which, again, that's sorting by average. And I actually feel that this is potentially unders for Errol, because if you look back at his previous seasons, he was able to average 131 GDS points in 2024 and 135.7 GDS points in 2023. So we also got to see a bit of a glimpse of what he can do in the last round of 2025 as he pumped out a huge 160 GDS point game against West Coast, which included 21 kicks, 15 handballs, 10 marks, and 2 goals. Just an absolutely massive performance. And it highlights the sheer variety of ways that he can get involved in the game, particularly on the outside of the contest and in transition with a really high kick to handball ratio. And if we look at those, rule changes, you alluded to that. I think these rule changes, if that game speeds up a little bit like we kind of anticipate it to, I think Goulden could be one of the really good picks this year and he could really benefit from those changes. Now, another reason why I think that he might be better again this year is due to Sydney's down year last year. You've already sort of spoken a bit about that. I think they really missed Errol in that first half of the season and it kind of coincided with their form. Once he came back into the team, they actually went on a bit of a roll and I could actually see that continuing into 2026. Following on from that, he also has a really nice age profile. So he's still only 23, believe it or not, turning 24 later this year. And scarily, he isn't even at the peak of his powers yet. But I believe that time is about to begin. So in summary, lock Errol into your sides now. And I'm happy to go on the record and say, I reckon Errol will be the highest scoring GDS player this year.
Well, big call, mate. But I definitely think he has the attributes to back it up. Like you said, he does have season averages of 131 and 135 in back-to-back seasons as a 19 and 20-year-old, I think it would have been then, which is just absolutely elite scoring from anyone in the game, let alone a youngster at that. And like you said, he's still coming into his prime. He's had another full preseason under his belt. Now he's looking absolutely unreal from all their preseason footage that I've seen. He, like you said, he's a gun of the competition. Lock him in, lock and load, absolutely every competition because, I think he'll definitely be up there within the top 5. I don't know about the top scorer, but I think he'll be in the top 5 for the season at the end of it, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Now talk to us about the prize recruit they've got there at Sydney.
Yeah, so Charlie Curnow has made that big high-profile move from Carlton to the Sydney Swans in the off-season where he now becomes the undisputed star of the show and focal point of the Sydney Swans forward line. He'll be hoping to follow in the footsteps of Swans' great key forwards such as Barry Hall and, of course, Lance Buddy Franklin, elevating his game for the Sydney faithful and embracing that rock star status the city craves. Curnow comes off an injury-interrupted 2025 season, averaging 80.1 GDS points across 18 games, which is down on his 2024 average of 89.57 GDS points. But even that's still pretty low for Curnow. The ceiling is pretty undeniable. During his second Coleman medal season in 2023, Curnow kicked 78 goals, including 6 games with 5+ goals, highlighted by massive bags of 9 and 10 goals in single matches, which just highlights the ceiling that he possesses when everything clicks for him. That season also saw him average 11 kicks and 7 marks per game on his way to a career high season average of 100.27 GDS points. So it shows that obviously he kicks massive bags, but he's also not reliant on goals. He obviously, takes marks to kick those goals, and obviously you get kicking points as well. So he does know how to rack them up, especially in those big games. And like I said, that leads to big ceiling scores. Now surrounded by Sydney's elite midfield ball use, Curnow is set to benefit from premium inside 50 delivery. As we mentioned, they've got Goulden, Heaney, and Warner delivering lace-out kicks, so he should see plenty of opportunities in the forward half this season. He's got cleaner supply and repeat entries played directly into the strengths as that dominant aerial target and elite finisher that the Swans have been craving for a couple seasons now. So if he stays healthy, Charlie shapes as a player who can kick big bags, anchor the Swans forward line, and sit right at the pointy end of that Coleman medal race again this season. I think he'll be a target for coaches in prime time and FantasyBros Sunday Showdown, but I think he could honestly be a massive pod in our standard competitions, and no doubt I'd be looking to play him if he looks anywhere near that Coleman medal winning best, especially if the matchup is looking very appealing for the Sydney Swans.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I talk a bit about that as well, did you say Goulden?
Yeah, I was just trying to join them all together.
I like it. That's actually good. That could catch on there, Heaney and Goulden. Charlie, I think he's going to be such a good player for the Swans. And I actually had his diamond last year up on the trade market for, I can't remember. I remember it was $30 at one stage and no one was biting. So I just left it there, and then this trade news came through, and I was like, oh, I'll take that back. Thank you. I might hold on to that one because that could come in handy this year. I think he'll be in for a great season. And if it comes around, so opening round, you're going to roll out your Charlie Curnow?
I haven't thought about it in depth yet. I'd have to look at the matchup. Maybe. Like I said, he is probably a bit of a pod, and probably looking to put on a big performance in his first game in Sydney colours. But at the same time, we always know there is a bit of an adjustment period for recruits coming across from another team. So it might take him a couple games. Obviously, he's looking good in preseason, but that's only preseason. Like, we know that round 0 is going to be the first serious matchup that Sydney have when it's like playing for points, when it absolutely matters the most. There might be a bit of rust, obviously coming off that injury interrupted season last year. So I think I might look to maybe not play him and just watch and wait to see what he looks like in round 0 firstly. But obviously we do have that reduced player pool. So who knows, my decision quite easily might change come round 0.
Guess you got to look at the lineup as well and sort of see, what cards do you have available to play in that opening round. That probably comes into it a bit. I think if you decide to play him in opening round, I think he could really reward coaches who take that risk. Like if he kicks a handful of goals, like that could be a really nice score for the coaches in opening round. They come up against Carlton too, so he plays against this old mob, and you'd imagine he's playing on week.
Lock him in, revenge game. We've always got to lock it in.
So do it now, you reckon, as much salary
There you
as
go.
you can.
Change my mind already. Lock him in.
There you go. Lock him in. Coming from the man who's tipped North Melbourne to finish as minor premiers.
That is not what I said.
Anyhow, you happy to move on?
As long as no one thinks that I'm not tipping North as the minor premiers. I think they might have a rise. Probably not anywhere near as good as Adelaide's, but I said if any team could potentially repeat Adelaide's rise, it could be North Melbourne this season. And once again, that is a very hot take. So let's put that to bed and move on. Let's not get the North fans up and about. But
that is OnlyFans level of spice, that call, I reckon.
I definitely do not support the Kangas, that's for sure.
or OnlyFans. Now on that too, like with Charlie Curnow, the other thing that just I remember there was with those new players that come into teams. So Curnow's coming in, obviously. We know that there is that bit of chemistry that takes a little bit of time for them to get used to. And I think Heaney, Goulden, Warner, like these really silky ball users, even Braden Campbell, I think is an underrated ball user. Delivering the footy inside from those boys, he is going to love that. But I just wonder, how long might that take to really start clicking? That was my concern with St Kilda bringing in so many players. There is just a period where it takes them a bit to adjust. So, that's probably the only thing as well that I'll be thinking of. But I'll probably still rip him out opening round and just, cross my fingers.
That's it. But that does bring us to the end of our Sydney Swans preview. We will now preview the Western Bulldogs. Pitty, do you want to run through how they went last season, their special comp summary, and their key player movement positional changes for 2026?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Bulldogs, they finished 9th on the ladder with 14 wins and 9 losses. They just missed out on finals. And in fact, they had the highest percentage ever for a non-finalist in the AFL era at around 137%. So if you remember back to last year, they were actually left in limbo at the end of round 24. They lost to Freo by 15 points, which meant they coughed up a locked-in final spot, and they had to sweat on that Gold Coast versus Essendon game, which was played the following Wednesday due to Cyclone Alfred's disruption at the beginning of the season. And poor Libba, he was running laps knowing that Essendon were never going to get up, and he could have been on the Terps by then. What a shocking scenario that was, them just waiting around for that result. But anyhow, they were actually a really good offensive team in 2025. And in fact, they were one of the league's top scoring teams, delivering a really exciting brand of attacking football with several big wins against bottom 8 sides. But the problem, it was that they really struggled against those top 8 teams, often falling short in those tight games and failing to continue banking wins across the season. It was not really that they would get pumped in those games. It was just they would fail to get across the line. But this consistently happened. And this will be another team in 2026 that will be looking to bounce back into finals contention. And at the very least, they should be featuring in the first ever wildcard weekend. So in terms of their special comp summary, they feature an equal second most 7 times in the Stats Lab prime time competition. So these Bulldogs cards we're going to be talking about, you want to make sure you are squaring a few of those away for that prime time competition. They only features 3 times in those Sunday fixtures, so you still want to be playing them there, of course, but just they won't feature as many times as a number of other teams. In terms of their under 22 eligible players, couple handy ones there. So Jed Buslinger as a defender, Jordan Croft as a forward, who actually has a very handy average, mind you. Joel Frazier as a forward as well, who I think he'll be someone we speak about. And Riley Sanders as well. His position is forward or getting bevoed. One of those two. Hopefully it's less of the latter this season because he's a star, and if he can see a bit more midfield time too, he'll be another great pick for our under 22s forward line. In terms of that key player movement, they had Taylor Duray, who retired. Jason Johannesson was delisted. Liam Jones retired. And Jamara Ugle-Hagan left for sunny pastures up at the Gold Coast. And key-ins, they had Connor Buderick coming from the Gold Coast and a handful of draft picks as well. So pick 21 was Lockie Carmichael, and pick 60 as well, Sam Darcy's younger brother in Will Darcy, a father-son pick there and an exciting prospect for the future. Could you imagine 2 twin towers down in the forward line with Will and Sam Darcy? Like, gee, that would be exciting in the future. And some notable position changes. Matthew Kennedy, one of the All-Stars from the Western Bulldogs from last season in 2025, he has actually had his forward status removed. He's now a midfielder in 2026, which probably makes him a little bit less appealing. Not that you wouldn't be playing that or rolling that card out, but you probably will be thinking about it a bit more than what you were last year. Joel Frazier has been changed to a forward, and so has Adam Treloar as well. Made anything standing out to you there?
Not a whole lot. Obviously, I think it's probably the under 22 eligible players. Like you said, we've got Joel Frazier and Riley Sanders if he's given the opportunity. But like you mentioned, Jordan Crawford also scores well when given that chance to play. So if he is the backup ruck to Timmy English this season, then maybe he is one to consider. Obviously, we don't have to play a ruck, even though he is like a forward status. But yeah, maybe one to potentially keep an eye on and seeing what the role might look like. They didn't really bring a whole lot in the offseason. Obviously mentioned that Connor Buderick comes across from Gold Coast, but outside of that, it was just their draft picks. And then obviously a whole lot of retirees, and they let Jamara go after that whole big scandal that he had last season and probably for the 6 months before that as well. So he's looking like a fresh player at Gold Coast, that we kind of mentioned during that episode. So how they kind of cover his key forward, obviously Will Darcy, as you mentioned, comes in. So Darcy Towers is probably going to be one of the things that the competition will be talking about for many years to come. And if Will Darcy is anywhere near as good as his brother Sam, then geez, the Bulldogs might be premiership favourites for years to come, because Sam Darcy is a legitimate freak. So let's hope that Will Darcy is not that good for the competition's sake. But outside of that, I think it's probably just, like you said, they'll be looking to bounce back and play some finals this year.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that probably just leads us nicely into those key talking points around the fantasy relevant players and the positions based on last season's starter. So Haz, do you want to start off by talking us through that key data for the Bulldogs in 2025?
Yeah, of course. So obviously Bontempelli and English were the 2 top GDS market share players for the Bulldogs last season. Obviously Bont finished with 6.79% of the Bulldogs GDS market share, followed closely by Tim English at 6.72. So they're probably the 2 clear standouts. And obviously there has been a lot of talk about Tim English and how these rule changes are probably going to favour him the most out of probably the relevant ruckman. Obviously his work around the ground is exceptional. So excited to see what it potentially means for his scoring this season. And I think he'll be a great pick early on, even without knowing what the scoring will look like for him. I think he will do really well, and I think it's going to be a pretty popular play for coaches across all competitions. Ed Richards took a really big jump last season to finish with 6.2% of their market share, followed by Libba, and then Bailey Dale, their rebounding defender, and then Matt Kennedy, the midfielder status this season, which is a little bit unfortunate because obviously he earned that all-star card in forward line, and I don't think he's probably going to be as relevant in the midfield this season, but he did have a market share of 6.09% last season, followed by that freak of nature, Sam Darcy. Their centre bouts attendances, obviously Tim English, the sole ruck, pretty much led the way the whole season. And as you can see, there is no other ruck in their top 10. So it pretty much showed that it was Tim English or bust. Obviously, Sam Darcy filled in a little bit there. Jordan Croft came in at the end of the season. Obviously, Ed Richards, based on the CBAs per game across the season, had a higher percentage market share. But obviously, if Bontempelli was fit and firing for all those games, I think he'd be right up there. And obviously, we know that Bont also likes to go forward and impact the scoreboard as well, which probably lowers his CBA percentages for last season. And then Libba and Matt Kennedy round out probably the relevant midfielders for the Bulldogs. Obviously, Adam Treloar, he is injury prone. Probably not looking to probably play Treloar in any competitions, even with that forward status. And I think he'll probably be on the outs with Bevo this year, to be honest. And that's probably just my gut feeling. I think they will probably look elsewhere. And they do have some young guns coming through that will probably look to play instead. And then their kick-in monopoly, Bailey Dale. He loves a kick-in as well. 126 kick-ins last year and played on it 94% of the time. And then he is followed by Lockie Bramble at 53 kick-ins, who played on it 92% of the time. And then pretty much left scraps for the rest. Jason Johannesson has obviously been dig-listed. He had 18 and Rory Lobb had 16, and they were probably the most relevant kick-in players outside of Dale and Bramble. Is there anything that really stands out to you, mate?
Just the rise of Ed Richards last season as well. Like he turned into, as you can see there, their number one midfielder. I do agree about what you said around Marcus Bontempelli. Like he played, I think he missed the first small part of the season.
Weeks.
Yeah, so I mean, potentially you would still say Bont is their number one player, of course. He's an absolute star, and check your cards now to see how many Bontempellis you've got, because you want to have a few of those for the different competitions. He's just an absolute jet that can do everything. And another one who I think the rule changes, won't really affect his scoring at all. But yeah, Ed Richards, if you go back to 2024, obviously Treloar was fit, or at least he was playing more in the CBAs, I'm pretty sure. But Ed Richards had 44% CBAs in 2024. And then last year, it bumped up to 75%. And his form was through the roof. He was incredible. And if you actually look at that 2024 season where he averaged 44% CBAs, he had a 101 GDS point average. And that bumped up last year to, I believe it was 115 thereabouts. Yeah, 115 GDS points. So he did get that bump from being in the midfield. And I kind of expect that they'll continue with him as one of their number one or as one of their best and primary midfielders, especially because Treloar, I think he's injured as well now recently. He's just re-injured himself. So he won't be going through there anytime soon, you wouldn't imagine. And even if he does come back, particularly with that extra player on the bench, he may be one of those players they look to manage and maybe play a bit more forward where they can, using for impact at the stoppages. So I don't sort of see him coming in to take that role off him. Liberatore, I think he's had a really slow preseason this year. Again, one that's just struggling with injuries. So he's sitting as their second midfielder there in that CBA list. To start this season, it could really be Richards, Bont, Kennedy will probably go through there again at times, you would imagine, but I sort of see him still hovering around that 50, 55%-ish. I don't see them bumping him up too much more. They might do, but I just think they've got a few other players they could roll through as well. So I think Ed Richards, I really like as a pick again this season.
Yeah, love the shout. He was great last year, and obviously he found ways to also drift forward and impact the scoreboard, which obviously, gives us coaches extra points. So yeah, another great play. It looks like he's going from strength to strength, and another preseason training as a pure midfielder will do him the world of good. But obviously, you mentioned just before that you have Errol Goulden as your pick for finishing the season as the highest averaging player. Well, I actually think it is going to be their captain, Marcus Bontempelli. I think he is just a person that obviously shows incredible consistency. I think he's averaged 120 points or more for the last 4 years. He just knows how to rack up the score across all the different lines, whether that be through kicks, marks, tackles, goals, you name it. So you've got Goulden, I've got Bontempelli. Let's see who finishes on top at the end of the season.
Let the big dogs go at it. Safe pick. I like it. Now, Bailey Dale as well. He's probably my only other one there on screen that probably just talk about a tiny bit. If they come up against any matchup where the opposition give points to rebound defenders, just play him because he absolutely beats down on opposition, particularly if it's under the lid at Marvel Stadium. So he's probably the only other one there. You can see he dominates that kick in Monopoly, and he has a huge ceiling too. So yeah, he's one that you want to be playing if they're coming up against a favorable matchup.
Yeah, who can forget the game that he had 49 touches last year?
Oh, yeah.
That was just insane. I don't think I played him that week, so let's move on.
Sounds good. Well, we did just cover a whole bunch of fantasy relevant players. So, mate, who are you keen on 26?
Yeah, so it is that freak of nature, Sam Darcy, otherwise known as the Unicorn 2.0. So I have gone from one key forward in Charlie Curnow to another, obviously in Sam Darcy. And he took the AFL world by storm last season and is already being spoken about as one of the most damaging players in the competition, despite having only the 2 full seasons under his belt. His impact comes from a rare and versatile skill set. Despite being 208 centimetres tall, he's able to lead hard at the footy inside 50 using that long reach of his to take the ball at its highest point, making it almost impossible for defenders to spoil without giving away a free kick, whether it's chopping the arms or a high contact. He has the ability to take those huge contested marks. He works up the ground and uses the ball cleanly by foot, while also pinch hitting in the ruck when required and giving the Bulldogs another genuine option around the stoppages. Despite that dominance forward of centre, he attended 13% of the centre bounces last season, operating as the clear backup ruck to Tim English last season. He had CBAs in all but 3 of his games last season that coincided with Jordan Croft coming into the team as that backup ruckman, which we talked about, which allowed Darcy to play solely as that key forward. He averaged an impressive 98.8 GDS points last season, and no doubt that figure would have been higher if it was not for that injury-affected game against St Kilda, where he scored just the 10 points when he went down with what everyone thought was a season-ending knee injury. Obviously, he bounced back and it wasn't as bad as what was first thought. So the competition took a sigh of relief because obviously everyone just loves watching him play, and it was good to see him come back later in the season and still dominate and not see that injury affect his scoring output. That was an increase. So his increase from 98.8 GDS points from his 2024 season average of 88.5 GDS points. So Darcy's scoreboard impact was elite in 2025. He finished the season with 48 goals from the 17 games. And that output was highlighted by his consistency, where he kicked bags of 3 or more goals on 9 occasions, so more than half of his games, making him a weekly matchup nightmare for opposition teams. He averaged 9 kicks, 5 handballs, and 6 marks to go alongside that goal-kicking ability, which just shows he isn't always reliant on kicking big bags in order to score well. And obviously, as well as a backup ruckman, he was also getting some, not many, but a couple hit-out points as well. When fully fit, his scoring profile, on-field influence places him firmly among the game's most damaging key forwards, and it's scary to think what he can produce this season. I think he possesses the biggest upside out of all the key forwards in the competition, and obviously I've just talked about Charlie Curnow, who is a 2-time Coleman medalist. I think Sam Darcy has a bigger upside, and obviously we've seen Curnow kick those big bags of 9, 10 goals in a game. So it is saying something what I think of Sam Darcy and what the competition rates him. And with another preseason under his belt, Darcy looks poised to push into the AFL's true elite category in just his 3rd full season at the 22 years of age. So, but unfortunately, he isn't eligible for our under-22 competition. However, he remains a very relevant pick for coaches in all remaining competitions, both our standard competitions, primetime, and FantasyBros Sunday Showdown fixtures when the Bulldogs are featuring. And he's already shown glimpses that he's ready to take that game to the next level with his form during the preseason, which has me a little bit scared for the competition, to be honest. He's been putting the Bulldogs' defense stocks to absolute work this preseason by kicking bags of 11, 5, and 6 goals across their 3 match simulations so far, underlining just how dangerous he looks heading into the new season. And as I mentioned, he is a freak of nature and one to consider nearly every week based on the upside he possesses.
Yeah, he really is, isn't he? He's sort of changing that narrative of our key forwards, and they're becoming very viable options every single week. And obviously Game Day Squad rewards that sort of scoring too. Every time they take a mark, kick and goal, that's 15 points. So I think that's one of Sam Darcy's features to his game is his ability to mark the ball and then kick a goal. So 15 points every time that happens. If he puts a bag together, that is a massive score. And then you can add salary on top. And he's just such a difficult matchup. Like, who do you play on him? Even Harris Andrews struggled last year when they played, and that was such a good battle back and forward. You just, it's very hard to try and spoil the ball when he's marking that ball that high.
That's it. There's no real good defender matchup that just has the height and the reach. And I think Harris Andrews is probably the most likely to be able to go with Sam Darcy. And like you said, they had that really good battle last year. But I think all the other key defenders, the good ones in the competition, Sam Taylor, Jacob Wiedering, they just don't have that height or reach to really go with Sam Darcy, which makes him a scary proposition for opposition. So, yeah, I'll be looking to play him quite a bit because especially in those weak matchups where the Bulldogs might look like they're putting a score on the board and Darcy's looking like he might kick 5, 6, 7 goals in a game, just purely because they don't have a good matchup for him. So I know Aaron Norton's down there and he does take a fair share of the goals at the Bulldogs, but I think Sam Darcy will be their main primary forward this season. And if Jordan Croft does take those secondary ruck roles, then Sam Darcy is going to be spending more time in the forward line, which means there's going to be more opportunities for goals kicked.
I just hope the umpires can call the arm chops, because that was the most frustrating thing last year watching that, when they'd be hanging off his arms and the umpires don't call it. And as a GDS coach, you're sitting there going, that's a mark, like pay the mark or at least the free kick and let him have a shot at goal.
Yeah, and I think you can tell that he was getting frustrated by that as well, because he knows that he puts himself in a good position by leading hard at the ball, getting his arms out, taking it at its highest point. He knows that no one can't go with him. And yeah, it's a little bit frustrating that the umpires can't see a clear chop because defenders can't reach that high. So it's pretty obvious to me. So hopefully this season they fix that up a little bit and he does get access to some more at least +4s by the kick, and then hopefully puts it through for a goal to give him a +12.
Yeah. So, mate, moving on there as well, Joel Frazier, he's my pick. He's another exciting player who's eligible for our under-22s competition, unlike Sam Darcy. And what a competition that's shaping up to be, just quietly. I can't wait for that all to kick off. And I can't wait to be sitting here talking about what a potential under-22s team would look like for ourselves in the coming weeks. But Frazier really came on last season, and some people were calling him mini-Bont with the way he runs around the ground and impacts the game. His GDS average bumped up from 71.1 in 2024, which was his debut season, to 83.6 in 2025. Now, mate, that actually surprised me because I thought back to what I remembered seeing of him last year, and I actually expected that to be a bit higher than what it was at 83. But when I dug back through the data, it actually kind of makes sense. Like in 2025, he played a variety of roles for the Doggies, depending on who was in or out of the side. To start the year, he had main balls distributor role out of the defensive 50, because Bailey Dale wasn't there to start the season. He was then thrown on ball as an inside mid until Bont returned in round 6. And then he was just kind of everywhere after that, which is exactly why he has forward status for us this season in Game Day Squad. And I have no doubt that the reason his average probably wasn't higher was because of this role uncertainty. If he can lock something down a bit more permanently this season, then we should see a nice uptick in his scoring. I mean, just looking back at his scoring last season, he actually put up some really good numbers, though, at times. Like just in 4 games in particular, he was able to notch up a 112, 116, 120, and a massive 137. So he has some serious talent. And the thing I notice in all these games is that it's his ability to push forward and hit the scoreboard. In those 4 games, he kicked 1, 2, 4, and 3 goals respectively. He's just such a damaging player forward of centre. Now, even though he's only sat 8th in the Bulldogs CBA list at 19%, I do still like that he saw centre bounce tendencies in 23 of the 24 games across the season. So it shows that Bevo likes having him rotate through there. And looking back to this year and what his role may be, he's been training and playing off half-back and through the midfield. And interestingly, in the match simulation they had up here on the Sunshine Coast, he was playing in their best team alongside English, Richards, and Bont in the midfield, with Sanders and Kennedy pinch hitting through there at times. So this bodes really well for the upcoming season, and hopefully he can lock down some more time on ball with the likes of Treloar and Libba struggling with injury, as we mentioned before. And when I sort of said there was a potential, there's some potential time in that midfield rotation with those two really struggling this preseason. That's probably the player I expect to play some more time through the midfield. That's Joel Frazier. But regardless, he's positioned as the second highest scoring under 22 forward this season. So even if all that doesn't quite eventuate, we should still be locking him into that special competition every single week and look to play him in starter. Sorry, not in starter. You can play him in starter if you want, but look at playing him in those standard competitions pending his role.
Yeah, it's interesting about the role from the preseason. Obviously, if he's inside that midfield mix and eligible for our under 22 competition as a forward, obviously, like you said, we're locking him in anyway. But if he is in the midfield mix, and like you mentioned, he does like to push forward, which obviously screams upside and points, then he does become an interesting pod in our forward lines for our standard competitions. Because, I think he is on a really good trajectory again this season. I think he will look to increase on his scoring once again. And like you mentioned, he has been called the mini Bont for the way he does run around and impact the game, basically from the 2 seasons that he's been in the AFL so far. So if anything, he looks to take the game to the next level and replicate Marcus Bontempelli, then geez, we're in for a treat.
Yeah, absolutely we are. Now, that brings us to the end of our Western Bulldogs preview. We'll now look at the West Coast Eagles. This is our last team of our preseason team preview series, mate. So about to shed a tear over here. Do you want to run us through how West Coast went last season, what their special comp summary looks like, and what their key player movement was this offseason?
So we are leaving the best for last. We have West Coast. No, I'm just kidding. Unfortunately for West Coast players and supporters, 2025 was another year that they would rather forget. They finished the 2025 season with the 1 solitary win and 22 losses, reflecting a side that's anchored to the bottom of the ladder while firmly entrenched in that rebuild mode. While results were difficult to come by, the Eagles ensured they did not go winless, with their sole victory of the season coming against St Kilda in front of their adoring home crowd in round 10. And it stood out as the genuine highlight for players, coaches, and supporters alike. That win provided a rare glimpse of what the group is capable of when effort, pressure, and execution can come together, offering that much-needed morale boost in an otherwise challenging year. Consistency remained a major issue, with West Coast struggling to sustain competitive performances across the 4 quarters. Injuries and a lack of experience depth across key positions once again tested their list and limited any chance of momentum throughout the season. Positively, though, 2025 delivered valuable development opportunities for younger players, many of whom were exposed to AFL football earlier than planned. But on a negative front, it was former co-captain Oscar Allen who was in the headlines for all the wrong reasons throughout the season. While out injured, he was caught meeting with Sam Mitchell mid-season in a move that showed even the leaders at the club wanted to get out and start fresh. Allen eventually stepped down as co-captain of the club after his negative spotlight and eventually got his desired move out of the club in the trade period, heading to the Lions. That latter position reflected the current stage of the rebuild, but the season helped clarify some list needs. Obviously, they went out and got some key players that we'll talk about in a minute, some future roles, and obviously their next core moving forward because they really hit the draft hard. So they'll be hoping that their top draft picks and some key trade acquisitions can help the club get a few more wins on the board in 2026, and maybe, who knows, try and get off the bottom of the ladder. But they're obviously, unfortunately, with their worst season in club's history equals the worst allocation of primetime fixtures in 2026. They will not feature in a primetime slot until round 15, so they will not be playing any primetime games. They will, however, play in the most FantasyBros Sunday Showdown games alongside Melbourne, with 9 games in that competition. So we're looking to target them as the Sunday Kings of 2026.
Are we?
And maybe. And they do have a very, obviously, as I mentioned, young list with plenty of key under 22 eligible players. Bo Allen, defender. Tyrell Dewar, defender. Ruben Jinby, who is a defender. Tom Gross as a forward. Clay Hall as a midfielder. Elijah Hewitt as a mid is actually someone I'm pretty keen on, and hopefully I can see him have another injury uninterrupted season and play all games and continue to take his game from strength to strength. Ryan Marrick as a defender, who was obviously pretty good last season for coaches, but he also got moved around late in the season. And then obviously their big star of the show, Harley Reid, obviously as a mid as well. And then their player movement, as I mentioned. So Oscar Allen headed to the Brisbane Lions. Campbell Chesser requested a trade and got to Carlton. Jaden Hunt retired. Jeremy McGovern retired. Jack Petricelli has been delisted. Liam Ryan has headed to St Kilda, and Dom Sheed, the grand final hero from 2018, who can forget that goal that he kicked and to beat the Collingwood Magpies? Just how good is that? He has retired as well. And then the key ins, obviously, Finlay McRae has come across as a SSP selection. Devon Robertson as well. Harry Scharenberg as well. So they've done some swooping on clubs that are players that have been delisted from their previous club and picked them up for relatively cheap and haven't had to give away any draft capital, which will hopefully put them in good stead for years to come, and hopefully they can impact their starting 22 this season. Brendan Starcevic is probably their big key trade acquisition coming across from the back-to-back premiers. We know he's one of the best lockdown small defenders in the competition when fit and healthy. So he's going to add, obviously, experience to that list and going to add leadership as well in that back line, because obviously the ball spends a lot of time down there in games. And then obviously, as I mentioned, they hit the draft really hard last season and picked up Willem Dersman with the number 1 pick, Cooper Duff-Tytler as the number 4 pick, and then Josh Lindsay with the number 19 pick. So keep an eye on those guys, especially for our under 22 eligible competition, because they will be players that will have access to scoring and they will probably be in the team from day one. And then notable position changes for 2026. Jack Graham has picked up forward status, moving from a midfielder, and then Tim Kelly as well has also picked up forward status, moving from a midfielder. A lot to get through there, mate. Is there anything that really stands out to you?
Yeah, so much to get through. Just the fact, like, how many key outs they had and how much experience they've lost as a team. Like, to think they sort of won one game last year and they've lost the likes of Allen, Hunt, McGovern, Ryan, Sheed. Like, there's some really big names with lots of experience. And they haven't really brought any big names in other than probably Stars, as you mentioned, but I wouldn't really say he's a big name recruit by any means, just a really good footballer that you know what you'll get from him. And again, that experience for the backline will help. But I think he's having a few knee issues this preseason too, so he may not even be there early to start this season. Probably the other thing as well is just the number of under 22 eligible players they have. I think there's some really good selections in there. Like you said, Elijah Hewitt is a midfielder. He'll be definitely one to watch if you're keen to play that under 22s competition, which I hope everyone is. But also Ryan Marrick as well. I know we might talk about him potentially when we get to that next slide, but I do really like his selection within that competition too. Tim Kelly, though, as a forward, would you have an interest in playing a Tim Kelly?
Not until I see anywhere, probably at least 5 games in a row of him back to his scoring pedigree from 2022, 2023, because he's looked a shadow of himself, that's for sure, and probably looking to completely fade him until otherwise.
Have you seen his averages?
I think it was 73 last season off the top of my head.
Yeah, 73. Do you see what he had done the years before that? Like, it was 99, so call that 100 in 2022, which is, it is what it is. It's probably not amazing again if he was a midfielder, but that's better than 73. 2023, he was 114.7, and then in 2024, he was 100, and then he's gone down to 73. So just a drop off. Like, yeah, it's just surprising, like the player he was at Geelong and what he was talked up to be going over there, and hasn't really fired. And I think, was he dropped a couple of times last year as well? Like, I think even in the list they've got, there's every chance that he might not even get a game at times this year if his form continues from last season. But hopefully he can turn it around, because as a forward, that would be a very nice little selection in particularly the FantasyBros Sunday Showdown comp.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so jumping in, we'll have a look at that data there, mate. I'm happy to run us through that there. If we look at their GDS market share, again, thanks to Hoss, that's work he's put in there. Tom McCarthy was at the top there in terms of the market share for the games that he has played. He had 6.23%. And if you can sort of think back to what some of these numbers are for other teams, they don't really have that massive scorer. Like even if you sort through their averages on game day squad, there's no one that really has an average coming off last season that you sort of really like. It's very low scoring just in general as a team. Nobody averages over 100 GDS points last season. And it, again, probably speaks to the season they had. They won one game. So it's very hard to be scoring well if you are losing and losing comprehensively. So they don't have any massive scorers. So their team scoring is down as is. But Tom McCarthy still comes out on top, 6.23%. His average was 97.8 GDS points. Jack Graham came in number 2, followed by Liam Duggan, who was just a really solid defender pick for us, and someone who I know I just played a few times last year, particularly at that D7 position, that last defender spot for us, just because he was quite consistent and you knew the ball was going to be down there, and he's that player with that experience they sort of turn to. So, yeah, I really liked Liam Duggan last season and even this year as well in, again, that FantasyBros Sunday Showdown. I think he should be a really good pick. Liam Baker and Ryan Marrick as well sort of follow in behind. If you look at their centre bounce attendances, so it was Matt Flynn, who was their primary ruckman, and their on-ball brigade, it was typically Harley Reid, Tim Kelly, and Elijah Hewitt. But if you actually look at their CBA percentages, they don't really have a massively dominant centre bounce midfielder. Like Harley Reid's probably what you would say. He's their number one midfielder there with 59% CBAs. But then it is just shared after that. Like, I mean shared. There's no clear number 2, number 3 midfielder. It's just Tim Kelly, Elijah Hewitt, Bailey Williams, who's that back at ruck, Brady Hoff, Jack Graham, Clay Hall, and then coming in 9th was Liam Ryan as a forward who's been traded, and Jack Hutchinson, who didn't play too many games either, or who was kind of in and out of the side. So they really lack some experience and some talent running through. Oh, actually, I shouldn't say talent. They've got some talent in there. That's wrong to say. But they really do lack that sort of clearly identified rotation that other teams have. If we look at the kick in monopoly, Ryan Marrick comes out on top. He took 93, followed by Liam Duggan with 59 and Tom McCarthy with 52. So those three, Marrick, Duggan and McCarthy, they dominate that kick in monopoly for the West Coast Eagles. And you can sort of bank on those three players taking kick-ins each game. And then, you know, the likes of McGovern, Tom Cole, Dewar, Liam Baker, Ruben Jinby. There's a number of players will take those kick-outs. But yeah, it's probably those three, Marrick, Duggan and McCarthy. What's the biggest thing to stand out for you there, mate?
There's a few, like you mentioned, they're obviously not probably as GDS relevant as most teams are because they just don't really have that standout scorer. Like you said, they didn't have anyone average over 100 points. Tom McCarthy is probably the one for me, and I will probably spoil it now. I'm going to talk about him in a little bit, so I won't go too much depth there, but he just looks like he's probably their best player, and he's only played 10 games. Like, I know Harley Reid is considered West Coast best player and like the star of the show and all that, but you can see there he averages 59% of the CBAs, but he's only 7th in their GDS market share. So he just doesn't put consistent scores on the board. He's either boom or bust. He is pretty much the definition of, you know, rocks or diamonds for Aussie rules coaches. So it is a little bit disappointing, and hopefully we can see him put together some more consistency throughout the season this year and put himself at the top of that GDS market share, because that's what he got drafted as. He got drafted as the number one with the high hopes that he was going to, you know, the club was going to build around him and he was going to lead the club in the right direction. And he hasn't really been showing that just yet. Obviously, he has those flashy bits of brilliance that has the world going, well, this guy can play. But it's few and far between him, in my opinion anyway. And I feel like he's worrying too much about some other things that are going on around the footy field.
I will say, just to jump in and defend Harley a little bit there, mate. I think it's pretty tough to like playing for the Eagles in the midfield there, as you said, as what would be called their best player. Like the other teams just target him because they know that, you know, they can sort of get under his skin a little bit. And West Coast aren't a very dominant side last season in terms of their performance. So it is quite tough for him. And he really has missed probably an Elliot Yeo running alongside him as that bigger body. Doesn't really have anyone there that can sort of go with him. So I do feel for him a bit at times, because you look at that sort of up and down scoring. I think that's probably characteristic of a result of the team that he's sort of playing in at the moment. And if they can find some form, maybe get a few players to go with him in that midfield with that bigger body, they can get some wins on the board, potentially see his scoring go up a little bit, but I do just feel for him at times out there. It must be tough.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong, 100%. And obviously, like you said, for a team that only won one game, it is going to be difficult to play in that midfield because most of the time it's just a ball up clearance and the ball is in the opposition's 50. But I feel like he just needs to find ways to impact the game outside those little bits of flashy brilliance that he brings maybe once a game, just be more consistent, just put his hands on the footy more often. I think probably only averaged maybe 20 touches last season. So just finding ways that he can stay involved in the game in those periods where he's, being targeted instead of just fading out of the game completely because, yeah, you're right. Like oppositions know that if they take him out of the game, then West Coast really don't have that dynamic player that can impact the game and really, take away the game from opposition. So he just needs to find a way to be consistent. And I'm taking that probably out of the GDS scoring aspect as well. I mean, him is just as a player for West Coast's sake because they do rely on him. And thankfully, he's looking in great shape this preseason. So hopefully this is the year that he takes that massive step and becomes one of those, premium midfielders in the competition and he bumps that average up over 100 points. Because, when you look at that, 4 out of the top 5 in the GDS market share are defenders. And that just shows how much time the ball is spending in their back line and how much work they're having to do, to get the ball out for it just to bounce straight back in because midfielders are struggling. And that probably comes down to, the continuity that they have because, like you said, they don't have a clear, second, third, fourth midfielder. They just seem to share the load across the board. And that was probably through injuries, through necessity, but obviously they've got some draft picks that are going to come in and try and make a difference from day one. So hopefully it's bigger and better things this season for West Coast, and it's not another bottom of the ladder finish for fans and obviously players as well. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, and even there, you sort of mentioned too that the midfield, as we touched on there before, just keep in mind to all our coaches that Elliot Yeo is not seen in any of that data because he didn't play in 2025. So he's a star player of the competition or has been for a while. So he is probably likely, you would hope if he's fit, he'll come back in that side somewhere. I'm not sure what his role will be in the team. I don't know if it's going to be coming in and playing as that number 1 or 2 midfielder. It may be. I would love to see it like that, but I'm not sure if they'll be able to. I think they'll want to maybe manage him back in potentially. He's just got that ability to play a number of roles, but I think they'll really look to enjoy having him back because it was only in 2024 where he played 20 games and averaged 106.5 GDS points. So, yeah, he's a star player, and I know they'll be very excited to hopefully have him back out there running around again this year.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, do you want to move into, we've just covered a whole lot of players. Do you want to move into with the player that you are keen to target or talk about for the Eagles this season?
Yes, we weren't really sport for choice, unfortunately. So I think we've sort of both taken the two that most people would have thought we would talk about. And obviously Harley Reid there I'll be talking about for those who are just listening along on Spotify. So if you are desperately you're desperately to be trying to pack this guy's legend card, if flipping the bird counts as a +4 in game day squad, I'll tell you that much. The other thing is that Harley Reid, he's one of the best under-22 players we can be picking from this season in game day squad. And arguably, I think he's one of the most exciting talents in the whole competition. Like, I can't recall watching a single other player where I've just been mesmerized by their combination of speed, power, IQ, and confidence. He seriously is the whole package when it comes to football. He'll just be looking to develop his consistency as a young player, as you said, and maybe looking to impact the game in other areas, or at least get his hands on the footy a bit more. But this is no doubt hard to do, as I said, when you're playing in the worst side in the competition based off last year. Entering his 3rd season now, Harley currently is and will continue to be the Eagles' number 1 midfielder, coming off a season where he averaged 59% CBAs and 82.8 GDS points. I only really expect these numbers to improve, as there's clearly no other player they'd rather have in the midfield over Harley, and an extra preseason could just see him take his game to a whole other level in 2026. Now, we did see a glimpse of this possibility at the back end of last year, where he had a 3-game stretch of 115, 131 and 142 GDS points across rounds 17, 18 and 19, before unfortunately getting injured in round 20 and missing the remaining 4 games. He really hit his straps in these games, and I actually went back to check if this coincided with West Coast's form improving. Unfortunately, this wasn't the case. They lost all 3 games. They got absolutely pumped in 2 of them, so there's no correlation there. One other thing I'll mention about Harley, though, is that the bloke just loves giving away a free kick. He actually led the league in most free kicks against for the season with 60, averaging just over 3 a game for his 19 games. So for those new coaches potentially who may not be aware of, if your player or one of your players gives away a free kick, he loses 2 points on his score. So this is minus 120 points for the season. So that's huge. There's a couple of narratives you could write here as well. The first option is that this can't continue, and it could be a serious reason that his scoring improves, even like if you don't count the actual football improving just yet. The other is that it really hurts his ceiling and his scoring in general. So I know it's something that he'll really want to be working on, and I know that West Coast will be working on this with him too. And as I said, if they can get Elliot Yeo back out there, I hope that would help him as well. Just trusting he's got somebody out there who's able to give him a bit of a hand. Now, this ability to give away a free kick could even make him a very interesting player to watch when it comes to a new type of special card available to GDS players, but I won't go into that too much just yet. All in all, I think that Harley is a lock for our under-22 team this season, as he was the 3rd highest averaging under-22 mid last season. And as I said, I only expect this to improve. Another player to be regularly featuring in the FantasyBros Sunday Showdown as well, which has $5,000 up for grabs. And mate, if I could flip a bird to end this Harley chat, I would.
Yeah, well, obviously, look, I've talked about my opinions of Harley Reid from the football aspect, but the numbers do say it all. Obviously, he does have that ceiling scores, like you mentioned, with that 3-game stretch where he 115, 131, and 142. So it just shows that when everything clicks for him and he certainly is on, and kind of comes back to my point about him being either a rocks or diamonds type player, because if he only averaged 82.2 for the season and he has those 3 big scores in there, that means that he had some seriously low scores mixed in there as well to bring that average out where it is. So yeah, it's probably looking to maybe pick your battles with Harley Reid. Obviously, like you mentioned, he's the 3rd highest averaging midfielder in the under-22 competition. So he's probably going to be a lock in pretty much all coaches' under-22 teams, but then maybe it's picking your battles with the FantasyBros Sunday Showdown and playing on matchup, looking to target maybe that ceiling, but hopefully he can clean up those free kicks, because that is 6 points on average that he's losing a game. So that bumps his average up to near 90 points already, which probably, I know it's not a whole lot, but it sounds more appealing than 82.8. So yeah, let's just hope that Harley Reid can, go from strength to strength and progress again this season.
Yeah, that's it. And Tom McCarthy now.
All right, so for the last player of our team preview series, I'm going to look at Tom McCarthy, whose journey to the AFL has been one of resilience and also a rapid rise, both at the same time, earning his opportunity at the elite level after being selected with the number 1 pick in the 2025 mid-season rookie draft. The explosive halfback midfielder made his debut in round 14 against Carlton pretty much immediately, and he changed the way the West Coast Eagles moved the ball. From game 1, McCarthy was handed the number 1 distributor role, entrusted with 10 kick-ins in his debut and playing on 100% of the time in that game, which shows a huge show of confidence from the coaching staff to give him that license. He collected 31 disposals in that first game, instantly establishing himself as one of the Eagles' most important players after just that single appearance. McCarthy continued to impress across the second half of the season at halfback, finishing with 52 kick-ins across his 10 games before a late season role shift. In the final 3 rounds, his midfield exposure jumped significantly. After not having any CBAs in his previous 7 games, he recorded 48%, 41%, and 43% CBAs, suggesting the Eagles were already experimenting with his role ahead of this season. And from all reports, McCarthy has been training with the midfield group this preseason, and his first full AFL preseason should only help accelerate his development as a player, but hopefully as a midfielder as well. He averaged 97.78 GDS points last season, which saw him finish as the Eagles' highest scorer in 2025. His numbers stacked up at an elite level as well, averaging 23.6 disposals per game, which was broken down by 15 kicks and 8 handballs, as well as 4.5 marks, showing that he can rack up the score across all lines. He also averaged a 470.3 meters gained per game, which ranked elite, underlining his importance as a line-breaking ball user with that dash and carry off the halfback flank. I have no doubt he'll go from strength to strength, and I'm expecting a 100-point average this season, and hopefully there will be more than just the 100-point average for West Coast this season. And with defender status, I think he'll be locked into my side for all the Eagles Sunday fixtures while remaining a prime watch for favourable matchups in standard competitions.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. And I think it was really clear last year that he became that number one defender for them and that distributor out of the back line. And yeah, just seeing what he's doing this season in that preseason is it's pretty exciting, isn't it? So I think that's a great shout for our competitions this year. And that actually brings us to the end of our West Coast preview and the end of our final preview show. However, before we end, it's time for our favorite part of the show, which is our pack opening game. Haz, do you want to explain to our viewers how the pack opening game works for our preseason shows?
Certainly can. So at the end of every preview show, we will open a 9-player rare all-star pack. And if any players from the 3 teams we've just previewed in that episode are pulled, or anyone from the previous 3 teams previewed, they will also go into the giveaway pool. So today, if any Swans, Bulldogs, Eagles, Tigers, Power, or Saints players are pulled, they will go straight into the giveaway pool. To enter the giveaway and have a chance at winning player cards, simply subscribe to the Fantasy Bros YouTube page, like the video, and comment who your MVP is for that particular preview show. That means you can have up to 6 entries in the giveaway by the end of our pre-season team preview shows. All winners will be drawn in our first live round preview on the 4th of March before the season commences. You can see on screen, mate, you have our 9-player rare all-star pack ready to go. Let's hope that we get some good pulls because we haven't really had that big pull yet to go into the giveaway. So let's hope tonight is the night.
What would you like, all-star or legend?
Either or would be great.
Okay, here we go. What have we got in our pack? Which row were you taking, mate? We haven't even worked out that. Probably go to the top end.
I'll take the top, just knowing that there's a flat up there.
All right, I just want to see what's there. All right, let's have a look at our golds first. Hey, gold Max Hall, that's very handy.
Into the giveaway.
But I think that's going straight in too. That's going to be a great pick. Gold Sam DeConning, that's nice as well, potentially. And a Sam Butler as well, platinum Sam Butler from the Hawks. All right, let's go our middle one next and see what we have here. Gold Bailey Fridge. Gold Josh Ward, that's quite nice, that card as well. And a gold L Hawley. All right, our bottom row. Let's start over here with our other golds. Oh, that's very handy, that card. A gold Harry Sheasel.
Into our giveaway pool. No, it's not. No, it's not. No,
I reckon.
No,
yeah.
No, it's not.
Oh, I think we do it anyway, just personally. All right, and what have we got here? Our last one. What a letdown to end the pack on. Wardius. A platinum Wardius from GWS. However, a pretty good pack all in all.
Yeah, it is not a bad pack. Obviously, like we said, Max Hall is a pretty good pull into that giveaway pool. I was just looking at all the teams that we've got to select from, and I'm like, oh yeah, North, that was not too long ago, but no, it's not one of the 6 teams that fall into the category for the giveaway pool. So it's your pack, mate, your call. Are you happy to add that one in as a bit of a nice card for coaches to potentially win?
Yeah, I think we'll put that gold Harry Sheasel in there. I've squared away. Yeah, I tried to early in the preseason, knowing what was likely to happen with Harry Sheasel this year. So I've squared away a couple cards for him. So I'm happy for that to go in the prize pool as well. As you said, we haven't had a massive draw card, so to speak. We've got a few that we can sort of top up the pool with, which we're very excited about, and maybe another surprise or so. So I think that gold Harry Sheasel will only add to what we've got there, mate.
Perfect. Love that. All right. A final reminder for new users who are still looking to sign up. When registering using the promo code FBAR26 in all capital letters, you will get 3 9-player common packs. And a bit of a spoiler, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, we will be dropping the first ever Aussie Rules fantasy textbook in the next couple of weeks. The textbook will be your preseason guide to everything GameDay Squad Aussie Rules. So make sure you keep an eye on all socials for the release date. Our team preview shows will drop every Monday and Wednesday on the Fantasy Bros YouTube, Apple Music, and Spotify pages. Don't forget to like and subscribe across all of our socials to keep up to date via at FantasyBros AU on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Apple Music, and Spotify. Pitty, 6 done.
Wow, 6 episodes done. I feel gassed. I feel like one of those 30-year-olds at preseason training. Like, I'm ready for games. let's get into it. But we've got 2 more episodes to go in this preseason, which is our positional rankings and our under 22s preview. So this is where we're really getting into the nitty gritty. We're going to start looking at some team builds potentially when it gets to those under 22s and looking at who our big dogs are. And I think we're going to be calling on some big dogs ourselves, which we can reveal a bit more about at a later point in time.
Yeah, love that shout, mate. And we've also got some footy this weekend. We have the State of Origin. So we do get a bit of a footy fix, which I am excited for. Bring back to State of Origin. And I think probably Victoria will be too good for the Western Australians on Saturday night. So I'm excited for that one. Just hopefully there is no major GDS impacted, I guess you could say, injuries or news headlines out of that game. And everyone gets out of it fit and ready for round 0 or round 1, so they can be placed into our teams, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly right. And thanks to everyone for their support across this team preview series. We've loved doing it, and hopefully you've got a few things out of it and a few players you're keen to watch heading into this season. So thank you again, everyone, for tuning in, and thanks, Haz, again, for another great episode.
Perfect. Thanks, mate. Thanks, viewers. Thanks, listeners. And we will see you for our positional rankings and under 22 shows. And we'll release that when we're probably dropping that on our Discord stage. Until then, see you later.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode by the Fantasy Bros. If you want to show your support, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this show on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Also, make sure you check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search at FantasyBros AU.